Welcome to a training video of the Export Deductions screen in PayPak Professional 4.0. This screen is used to import deduction entries from an import file which has a specific format used by PayPak Professional. There are two types of deduction import files. One type is mostly used when creating year-to-date batches. The other is used when importing deductions such as cell phone charges or cash shorts, where the amount deducted varies from pay period to pay period. Please see the training video on export deductions for instructions on creating data files for deduction entries. So let's sign in and show you how it works. The Import Deductions screen is found under the Import section of the menu between Import Gross Pay and Import Taxes. So click on the button and here is your screen. Now this screen will require an import file which contains deduction entries. This file would typically be created from PayPak using the Export Deductions screen. You fill out the entries and then you import it. It's much quicker than having to manually change one entry after another in cases where, for example, if it's cell phone charges that you're doing, you have maybe 10 employees, 20 employees, 30, 40, 50, maybe even more. You might have 100 employees or 200. And to edit each one of them in cases where the deduction amount is not going to be the same, it can be quite time consuming to move from one entry to another. And therefore, using the import, especially if you use an Excel spreadsheet, which is the easiest format for editing, allows you to import those entries very quickly. You could also be importing deductions for the purpose of creating for importing entries for year-to-date batches. If you're doing year-to-date batches, you started using PayPak maybe in June of 2021, and you may have created some batches already for June, the month of June. You've created some batches, but when you print your pay slips for the employees, they do not show the full correct year-to-date because the data from January to May is not there. So you may want to use this screen to do a year-to-date batch so that your pay slips are complete. It could be a case also where the business started maybe 2 years ago. You started in 2019 and you wish to go back and create year-to-date batches with the gross pay, the taxes, and the deductions for internal reporting purposes, for tax reporting purposes, and sometimes also maybe for severance pay purposes. In some cases, customers will want to go back and enter the deductions for past years. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. The choice is yours. But if you need the deductions, either some of them or all of them, this screen is where you can import the files which contain year-to-date deduction entries. Now, let's start by showing you what one of those files looks like, what the files look like. Some of them were created in a previous demo where we exported deductions, and we'll just have a look at some of them before we do an actual import. So I have a folder here for my import deductions, and there are 10 of them. There are 4 which came from the employee profile. These are deductions taken from the particular employee profiles, and for those 4, one is in Excel 2007, one is in Excel 2003, one is a comma separated, and the other one is a tab delimited. There are a matching 4 for the templates, which came from a section we call the template, where you can specify specific deductions, which is an option you would probably use if you're doing cell phone charges or cash shorts and you're filling in the lines. And they contain similar information, the same four formats: Excel 2007, 2003, the CSV, and the tab delimited TXT format. We have two files at the bottom which are for filling existing lines, because when you import deductions, you have two types of files that you can work with. There's four formats to begin with. The four I mentioned just now: Excel 2007, Excel 2003, comma separated values, CSV, tab delimited values, TXT. But you can have files which add new deduction lines, and these add new lines to the selected batch, because you're taking these lines, you're importing them into a batch. When you choose the format which was for the add new lines, which is the format that has the most columns, those entries in the file will be added to the batch as new lines. When you choose the fill existing lines format, which is a shorter format, it has less fields, what you're doing there is there are lines in the batch already for your employees, but the lines have zero in them. They have nothing in them, or they may have something in them, but you're changing that amount. You're filling in that line with, say, the cell phone charge amount for that particular pay period, or the cash shorts amount for that particular pay period. So filling existing lines is, the lines are there, they have zero in them. You have a spreadsheet with the totals. That's where you can get your cell phone bill. You go through the list of employees and you fill in the amount for each employee. And when you import it, it will fill in that amount. It will find the particular matching employee and automatically fill in the total. And it can be much faster than having to manually edit the batch. So we are going to be showing you what these files look like. There's a batch that was created especially for this demo, which has 4 employees in it. So let's go to the add new lines for the Excel 2007 for the employee one, and let's open that. This is LibreOffice I'm using, and let's maximize it here. There are a number of columns on here. You want to see all of them. And this is a file which was created, and it has some entries in there, and just bring it back across here. Okay, good. So in the file, oops, gone too far across. Right, okay. In the file, there are entries in there, and they begin, there are a number of columns. There's quite a number of columns, and you need to understand how this all works. The other option where you are filling in the lines, the file is, it has a lot less columns. But when you're adding new lines, such as maybe the case if you are doing a year-to-date batch, and these are year-to-date deductions to be filled into a year-to-date batch, this is what the file would look like. You've got the name of the employee. This is just used for reference. You have a description, which is the authority and the branch. And again, it's just for description. That's indicated by the asterisk. The asterisk lets you know that these are fields which are just there for navigational purposes, to let you know which employee and which authority, which branch you are working with, which the deduction is for, but they're not actually used for the import. But the files, these columns must still be there. They can also be blank. They don't have to show anything, but they're helpful for navigation, because without them, you only have the employee ID or the employee number. In this case, the database does not have an employee number, but in the import file, you need either the employee ID or the employee number, or both, one or the other, or both. There's also a payment number, because you can be importing, let's say you have a year-to-date batch in which you have totals for 2019 and totals for 2020. It's possible to have a year-to-date batch with entries for 2019 and entries for 2020. Typically, the entries for 2019 would carry payment number 1, and the entries for 2020 would carry payment number 2. So this payment number is used to identify where there are multiple entries, which particular entry you are filling. That's when you're filling numbers for the most part. It could also be used when you're to add new lines, because it needs to know which entry it's to the lines, the deduction lines are to be added to. So where it's a 1, it would add those lines to the 2019 entries, and where it's 2, it would add these deductions to the 2020 entries. This would have been set up when the file was created. We then have the branch ID, and this should be a valid branch ID inside of PayPak. You've got your calculation method, you've got your amount, and in this case only the first line has an amount in it. The other options for deductions are all there. We did not choose account type or account reference, well, they're blank. Account number has NA. I believe something is wrong here, because the account type should say NA. I'll correct that. That should be in here. I'll look into that because something's going wrong there. The account reference is there. Okay, that's blank. Okay, so I'm going to save this. That would actually have caused an error, which is maybe not a bad thing, because when we go to verify it, we would see. So maybe I'll undo that. Maybe that's what was put there for, to generate errors, so you can see the error trapping options of the software. So anyway, actually, it could have been actually NA, tell the truth. It could have been that, now that I think back. Anyway, the options are there. They also have a column for the employer amount of the deduction, where there's a amount here for those, and you have the payable account ID and the expense account ID. And again, where accounts are involved, these must be valid account ID codes from PayPak. So this is your file. Save it over again, and I'm going to fill in some numbers in here. If you are doing a year-to-date batch, these would probably be fairly larger numbers. If you're doing it for an individual batch, deductions for an individual batch, these will be smaller numbers because the year-to-date is annual totals. So let me just fill out everything in here and put some numbers in. 5,000, 6,000, 6,500, 19, 12, 1528.25, 45, 41, 11, 57. Let's fill some numbers in at random. You would be getting these numbers from your old payroll system, or if you use Excel or whatever system you use to calculate your payroll before. This is where these totals would have come from. And 2,000, and let's make this last one $200. Fine. So I have filled out the totals in this employee deductions, and I'm going to save that. Now, Excel is not the only format. There are other formats as well, and I will show you some of them. There's an employee deductions. This is the Excel 2003 format. There's a CSV format, but the CSV format is not the easiest human readable format. This is the same file we saw just now. there's an amount here that you can fill in the amount in this column. So I could put $9,000 in there. I could put $7,000 in here. And if you wanted to separate the thousands in the numbers, you have to enclose it in double quotes if you're using CSV. So there are a lot of different rules. There are different set of rules for editing these files. You have to be familiar with how to edit a CSV file if you're going to be coming in here. So 4500.56 would go in like that. If I was using comma separation, I would enclose it in brackets. I'm just going to save that. I'm not going to touch this anymore. The main thing is to show you that it's easier to do your editing in Excel if you need to edit these files and work with one of the Excel formats than it is to work with the CSV or the tab delimited format. The tab delimited format looks something like this. And this is where you enter your totals in, like here. I would put, if that was to be $75,000, I could put $75,000 there. Much easier to use the Excel. Also remember that you can edit these files to add new lines. You're not limited to the ones that are there. What's important though is that you don't tamper with the format or change anything, because that can then cause errors and the file will not import. Going back to the let's go back to the Excel one in a moment, and let's fill existing lines. Sorry, that's not the one I want. I want the employee sorting by date modified. I want the employee deductions, add new lines. Right, names are quite similar. This is the one I want here, and it's quite possible for you to insert new lines in here as well. So if you had created the import file and then you came across an entry in your old records that was not set up in the template or in the file, you could insert, you can copy a line. Let's say we copied one for, you can insert a line for Tiffany Davis, say. You could fill in this information, put in her code, fill out this, put the correct branch code for it. And if that branch code was not created in PayPak yet, then you could go to PayPak, set up the authority on the branch, and then get the branch ID and place it here. And then you fill out the rest of this information. So I could do that here, for example. Just copy that and come back over here and paste it in. And let's say that this was for what would this be for? Let's say cash shorts or something. Do we have cash shorts in here? You could say cash shorts. And if there was a shorts account, you could put cash short if that was the ID for the branch. And then you put the amount in here. Say it was $2,500. So there's your $2,500, and you can set it to the shorts account, which would be the valid, which must be a valid account ID in PayPak, and then you can edit it pretty much like that. I'm not going to save that though. I'm going to just leave that as it is, just as it was before. Don't save. So that allows you to see how you can edit the file. The important thing is do not change the columns around. Don't insert columns. Don't delete columns. You can add rows. You can insert rows. Make sure your data is in a valid format. Now, the file has been created. The other file, let me show you the other file for the filling in. Where you are filling in cell phone charges, I'll use the template one. This is to fill existing lines. And in this case, we have cell phone charges. This was prepared already. You have the employee ID and the number, or the names. Why is it all the way over here? I'm not seeing columns. Right, A and B, right. So you've got column A and B, the employee name and the description. These are cell phone charges. Typically when this file was created, it would have had zeros in here, like that. and then someone would have come in and keyed in the amounts of the cell phone charges. So if this person had $125, this person's was $80.95. This one is $63.65, and this one's $298. That's what you would do. And this would have been set up already with the branch ID codes and whatever else needed. So it's a very simple process. You come in here, fill in the information, save the file. I'm keeping my Excel 2007 format, and this is all ready for importing. Okay, and then what you could do, you can either save the file if your employees are not your staff doesn't change often. If your staff does not change often and your branch codes are not being changed and your employee IDs are not being changed, you can take the same file and reuse it. Just come the next pay period and change the figures for that pay period and use it again. Otherwise, if people change, if someone gets married and their surname changes, their employee ID changes, people leave the company, people join the company. If you've got changes like that, then it's best to create a new export file each period and then fill in the totals. So those are our files. We have one for adding new lines and we have one for filling existing lines. I'm going to close this and we're going to go back to the Import Deductions screen. We know that we have our files up to date and filled out and the information is in them. That's the first step. So this is the screen. Let's start with a look at the layout of the screen and then I'll show you how it works. At the top you have the format, and there's 4 formats to choose from: Excel 2007, Excel 2003, comma separated, and tab delimited. Then you have the file name and you can browse and choose the file. Once you've chosen the file, there's the date and time modified to verify that that's what you're looking for. Then you have the batch, which you're going to be importing these entries to. They must go to a batch. Then you have the line processing option. You would use add new lines if you're adding brand new lines, and use fill existing lines if you're filling in lines, such as for the cell phone charges file, which is the small format. At the top right, there's a cluster of totals here: the number of employees, the number of lines, and the number of errors. Then we have 3 tabs. There's an options tab with a number of match and file options and import options. There's a details section, which is split into a list of the file contents, and under that there's a section for the errors, if any, so that you can validate the file. Then there is a session option, so that it shows you, this would show you each time you attempt to do an import, because you can process several files in one sitting, and this would show you, you may have maybe different batches. Suppose you have 5 batches and you have 5 import files. This tab here would allow you to see that you've done 3 of them, so you have 2 more remaining, so you know where you are. So that's the tabs section there. Under the tabs there is a progress bar, which indicates the progress of the import. And at the bottom of the screen there are a number of buttons which control various functions for this screen. So let's start at the top. We are going to go with Excel. We're going to be adding some new lines. So we click here and we say we're going to go to the C drive. We're going to go to my demo files, and this is Import Deductions, and we want the one where we use the employee deductions to add new lines. That's the one I not long edited. I'll tell it open, and I then say at the bottom the date modified and the time modified. My batch, I have a year-to-date test batch, which is created especially for this demo. That's the one I will choose, and I'm using the line processing option for add new lines. That being done, I now go to my options, and these are match options. I cannot turn off these options. I can't edit any of these because I've chosen add new lines is disabled. For the file options, I have two options here. I want to, my file has headers, so tick data has headers. There's an option to delete after importing. I do not want to do that. It's an option you have. If you want to reuse the file again, you want to keep it, so you would turn that off. Maybe you want to delete for purposes of security. You don't want anyone to see what those options are, or you don't want the file to be imported again after it's accidentally, so you may want to delete it for that reason. I will choose to leave it off. Then you have a number of import options. The first option says all entries must be verified, and basically that's all aboard. If you have 15 entries in the batch, all 15 must be verified in order to import. So if there's errors or problems, you have to fix the file, or fix maybe it could be a missing branch code or incorrect branch code or account code in PayPak. You'd have to fix it from either end, either in the file or in PayPak. Try again, and once everything is verified, then you can proceed. The other option is import verified options only, and you can choose either one of these. So turning on the import verified entries only will turn off the option that says all entries must be verified. So in that case, you had 15 entries and 3 of them have problems. It will allow you to proceed with the import, and the 12 which are good go forward, and the 3 which are problems would be detained. They'll be held back, they would not go through, and that gives you the option to either abandon them or go back and fix them, and you can import them separately on a second attempt or subsequent attempt. Find out whatever the problems and import them again separately. We are going to choose all entries must be verified in this case. The other option, the last option at the bottom here, is clear details after importing. Now the details is this tab here where the entries are listed, and you have the option of clearing that grid. Sometimes customers may want to see after you've imported it, even if it's successfully imported, you may still want to see what it was that you imported. You may want to import them to another batch. Who knows? It could be entries that you have 2 batches and you want to import them into, you can have maybe 2 fortnightly batches, a batch for the 7th and a batch for the 14th, and you want to import these deductions into the batch for the 7th, and you want to import the same deductions again into the batch for the 14th. So for that reason, you would keep the details displayed. Now, I'm going to leave this ticked. The details section is there, and the next step is to click the display button and see what happens. So we click display. There's a validation process, and it is telling me that the verification has failed due to errors. You should review or print the errors, then make corrections to the detail lines and go again. Now I have 16 errors, so I'm going to click this, and indeed it was that account type. The account type is required. Now the account number says NA. I don't think that was a mistake. I think when the batch was created, the import file was created, we used NA for the account number, but we should have also put the account type as NA. So it tells you what the error is. You can actually print those errors. If I click the print here, I can preview that, and this is what the error report will look like. So if you have a large number of entries, you could print this report, use it to fix the file, make the corrections to the file, and try again, which is exactly what we're going to do, except we won't be printing it. We know what the error is. So I'm going to go back to my add new lines file, which is employee deductions, add new lines. This fella here, we open it up, and the complaint is that the account type needs NA. I'm actually going to copy these and paste them in the account type. And for the account number, there are a number of these. It could be blank, it doesn't need it. But to be realistic, I want the Sagicor ones. The Sagicor ones may have an account number for the particular employee. So what I would do there is I'm just going to put in a number for each particular employee. I'll just make up a number because some people may have a unique number. So this person's number is YTD. If you'll note, these names are not just made up like that. YTD. That's what this is for. So YTD 1000. For the sports club, I'll just put sports club. This one was for guardian pension. Let's put PEN. This is a particular account number for this person. PEN 101. This is Digicel cell phone charges. We'll just use the word cell phone charges. I'm going to try and make it realistic. It doesn't take long to edit it. So we'll copy this, and all the ones for cell phone charges, we'll paste that in there. I don't want to be warned. I know what I'm doing. Thank you. And we paste it here, and we paste it here. The Sagicor Life YTD, and let's use 1001. The Sagicor Life YTD 1002 and YTD 1003. Sports, we'll use Sports Club. Paste, paste, and paste. And then we have the Guardian, just call it PEN 102, PEN 102, because each person, it may be going to a specific account number, that deduction, and you want that to be correctly indicated. You could also just use balance brought forward as the account number if you're doing a year-to-date batch, and it really doesn't matter, because these things would have probably been processed already. You're just updating your records. So it would be quite fine to do something like balance brought forward, something like that, if you wanted to. But we've started already, so let's use PN 104. Actually, this should be PN 103. PEN 103. So we've corrected the account type, which was required, that was causing the error. We have edited the account number, so the correct account number, or some semblance of a correct account number, goes in. We save our file, we close the display, and we go back to the import deduction screen. Let's try our display again. I actually think, no, it says, do you want to start over? I say no. What I can do here is verify. I click on verify. It's got, oh, I need to display again. I need to display again. The verify would be if I had, if it was a problem on the PayPak end and I corrected it in PayPak, I could have then clicked on the verify button. Okay? But I had to display the file. The file itself was incorrect. Now, this time there are no errors. I've got my 16 lines. Everything is good. The import button is there. And I can now import these entries, which I will do, and they have been successfully imported. So I'm going to go to the batch. Now if I click on session, that's my session information here. So that's the file, that's the date, that's the time, and that was the batch it was imported to, and the line processing option was add new lines. I should have turned that off. I had turned it on. I wanted it on actually. Anyhow, we know now. And these options, I can actually click the settings button so that I save these particular settings, the options that are here, the format, and so on. Now, we want to look at that batch, having imported those entries. So we're going to take a look at batch 197. We go to the transaction screen, we edit the batch. Here's my batch 197, and it has taxes of 53,770.74. Those would have been imported using the import taxes screen because the gross pay is 0. Those are fixed taxes, and this is our deductions, which we just imported, the 51,045.76. We edit the batch, and those deductions are in. I can click on the deductions tab, and these are the deductions which we just entered for Yvette Daniel. This is Yvonne Davis. This is Johan Denny, and this is Johan Dottin. So there you have it. Successfully imported. We've got the references which we just typed in, the PEN and the YTD, the sports club and the cell phone charges. The account is there. If you needed now to edit this batch or make any changes to the figures, you can now do that just as you could with any other batch. The only thing missing from this would be the year-to-date gross pay. So let's exit the edit batch screen, and now let me show you how we would import the deductions which are like cell phone charges and shorts. We had the one for the cell phone charges. So let's first of all create a year-to-date, but no, sorry, not a year-to-date batch. Let's create a current batch. I think we had some posted batches for these folks. I think there were a couple of batches posted for these people. That's in batch control actually. That's where I need to go, in batch control. 2021. No, they were not. Was it in 2020 or was it in 2019? I think there were some batches for these people. Was it in 2019? There's only that one there. Yes, there is. There's a batch that was done on Friday the 7th of June 2019. Now it has deductions in it, so let's see. No, we won't use that. We'll create another one. Let's create a batch, say, for the following week, because this already has deductions in there for the cell phone charges. See, that was done already when the batch was created. We want to create a batch that does not have cell phone charges. So let's go to the employee profiles, because to show you this properly, we need to go to the employee profiles. Those employees most likely have the can't remember the names offhand, but they're in a particular batch. All right, there they are. There's Yvette. These are her deductions, and these are the amounts which are being taken out. Now we have a line for the cell phone charges. Actually, cell phone charges says 0. So that, I'm just verifying here. There's Yvonne. Okay, that's fine. We have a go ahead. The cell phone charges amount actually do say 0. So we're good to go. When we are going to create a batch and import the cell phone charge amounts as deductions into that batch. So let's go. We hit new batch. Come here. Let's say it's the, what's the last Friday? I date my batches on Fridays. Let's date it the 11th of June. We choose year-to-date test, and there are the 4 employees. we prepare the batch, and let's do a quick editing to put some money in there because it probably has no gross pay. There's some deductions. There it is. So we edit the batch, and let's give them some hours. We put 40 hours for you. Save that. Just probably give everyone 40 hours so we have some amount of pay in there. I could have used the mass edit, but for 4 employees, hey, it's not going to make much of a difference. We just have 4 people. Obviously, if you had much more than this, you would use the mass edit. It's much faster. Okay, so let's look at our net pay. Okay, our employees have some net pay. There are deductions of various amounts in there, but they've got some good net pay figures. If I go to the deductions, the cell phone charges is saying 0. So instead of me having to come to each person and drop in their cell phone charges, which would still be easy in this case because there are just 4 of them. But what if there were 400? Understand? If there was that number, that's where the import deduction screen comes in useful. So we're back at the screen. This time we want the fill existing lines file, which is this one here, fill existing lines. That's the one that we changed. No, this is the one we changed because I'm looking at the time. So we actually filled that one. And the batch which we want, it's not in here. I need to click on the refresh button. Then I've got my batch, which is, what date did I choose? Right, 11th of June. There it is, right. 198. So that's our batch. And we are going to change the option of line processing from add new lines to fill existing lines. It has an option that says whether you want to match by account number or not this time. Remember, this was disabled before when we chose the add new lines. Now, if I match by account number, it means that the account number in the file must match the account number in the batch. Reason for that is, let's say you have someone, normally when people have deductions, they have one account with an institution, but it's possible they may have 2 or more accounts with the institution, and each account has a separate account number. If that's the case, you want to match the account number, otherwise the deductions will all go to the first matching line for that authority. We'll turn off the account number in this case because we only have one deduction for the cell phone charges, and I know I put an account number in there, but that account number may not have been the same as what's in the batch because I created some of them, I think. Okay, so account number, there it is. Then we say data has headers. We're not deleting the file. All entries must be verified. We'll look at that for now and see, because it's possible it may not verify some of them. I don't know. Clear details after importing is turned off. We've got our details grid, and I'm going to click the display button and see what happens. Do we have any errors? Yes, we do. So it says that the account, no matching deduction for this branch and account number. It needs the account number column. Now in my options, hey, it was turned on. How did that happen? I turned it off. I thought I turned it off. So let me display again. And we are good. So we now have the entries have been found and matched. Not quite sure what I was looking for, an account number. The account number says cell phone charges. In here, in the batch, it would have been something different. And if there were different account numbers, I would have to go back to the file and edit it. It doesn't take long, and make sure that it's correct. So these are the amounts which will now be imported. I can verify them by clicking there if I needed to, if I changed anything. And I can now import, and it says deductions have been successfully imported. And if I go to my session, I now see that there are 2 entries in there. Let's have a look at batch number 198. You go to edit batch. There's 198. It has deductions of $857.60. I now edit it, and let's go to deductions for Yvette Daniel, and there's your deduction. It's filled in her cell phone charges. It actually did not have an account number in the batch before. That's why it didn't fill in. There's Tiffany Davis, $80.95. There's Johan Denny, $63.65. And there's Johan Dottin, $298. And as with the previous batch, if you wanted to edit these figures for whatever reason after they were imported, you can change them just as you would change any other batch. You can even put in an account number if you so needed to do. So that basically is it. Now this does not have the account number. Oh, we turned off the account number, that's why. Now if I had wanted to, let's go back to the screen where we do the import. Let's see. All right, this matching in here. Right, if you had wanted still to have the account number come over, that would have to be specified in the settings for the file. Okay, but we've got our information in. It's been imported, and you can now post your batch, which I will now do. I have to save this entry because I was just editing I could have undone it too. So I'll post my batch, say yes to this. The batch is posted, and that brings that segment of it to a close. I just want to run over some of the other buttons at the bottom of the screen. We've seen the display and the verify and the import. Also the new button that will clear the screen. The refresh button will refresh the entries on the page, the selection, for example, for the batches. The settings button will save your settings, your options and whatnot. The reset button will clear the settings. The video button will launch your browser and display the YouTube video which you're currently viewing, if you're ever using this feature and you need to remember how it works. And the exit button brings this video to a close. So I thank you very much for your time as always. It's been a pleasure, and do look forward to the next training video. Take care and goodbye.